Yes, good morning to Matt Dickerson, our regular guest with Tech Talk, technologist, futurist, speaker, author, and you're definitely a poet after listening to your message bank there, Matt. How are you?
Oh, look, I love the limerick. A limerick's nice and quick and easy to create, and it is a poor cousin to a form of poetry. Although, look, I suppose we can call a limerick a poem, can't we?
You should try singing it. Would you be any good?
Not at all, no. One of the important things I've found in life, one, is know your limitations, and that's one of my limitations.
I thought we'd get a better laugh out of it then.
It would. You want people to keep listening to the radio, don't you?
Yeah, we don't want them to tune out. Now, everybody will be tuning into this because people like security cameras. There's plenty around. So here's the question, and you pose this. Can security cameras be used to tell burglars when you are not home?
Well, it turns out that the answer is yes, you can actually. If you're a clever burglar, and I hesitate when I say that because I don't like to think of burglars as being that clever, but if you're a clever burglar, you could set up outside someone's building, someone's home, and actually just listen to traffic. And so you could actually tell from the amount of traffic that's going on and the type of traffic. You wouldn't have to see what was on those cameras, so you're not actually having to be clever enough to hack into those cameras, but just by what's called sniffing the traffic, you can actually detect what traffic's going, how much of that traffic's going, and effectively you can see whether or not someone might be remote and looking at their cameras as opposed to sitting in the house where they're presumably not looking at their cameras while they're in their house or in their business. So, in other words, set up outside the house, you sniff some traffic, suddenly there's an increase in traffic and you can say, well, I'm pretty sure that means that someone's at a remote location, whether it might be at work or might be on holidays, but they're at a remote location somewhere and they're looking at that traffic or looking at their videos, and therefore there's an increase in video type traffic. I know no one's home. It's time for me to go and break in.
Oh, what can you do about it?
Well, there's probably a few things you can do about it. There are some video camera manufacturers now who are looking at creating some fake traffic so that if someone is out there sniffing for data, they won't really be able to tell the difference between when someone's home, when someone's not at home. I suppose the other thing is if you've got a good video set up, when they do break in, thinking that no one's home, hopefully you'll capture them on video before they go and destroy the video cameras.
So, Matt, they'd have to be pretty good with technology to be able to figure any of those things out, whether somebody's at home or not, wouldn't they?
You're right, and that's one of the things I hope that people that are clever enough with technology like that are using their talents in a much better way than sitting outside your house or my house and sniffing the traffic to see whether it's time to break in. So I think you're right, they've got to be fairly clever. The risk, I suppose, there is that someone might create the technology to make it very simple for someone to actually sit outside someone's house and sniff for traffic. So they may not be that clever themselves, but they may buy a device that allow them to do it. And again, you'd hope this sort of thing doesn't happen, but there's some people out there that have got some very twisted ideas on what's a good use of their intelligence.
There certainly are. I'm speaking with Matt Dickerson. Mathew Dickerson is a technologist, futurist, speaker, author and poet, and this is Tech Talk. And Matt, the tax return, did the dog eat the tax return? Do we have legitimate excuses for not lodging our tax return?
It does sound a bit like the dog ate my homework. Sorry, Mr. Tax Officer, I couldn't lodge because your website was down, and obviously the normal answer would be a sure thing, but it actually crashed. There was huge demand on the first day of the financial year, just a few days ago, and it actually crashed the website, and that's pretty disappointing. We've seen that before, obviously, with MyGov, when MyGov previously crashed. And I suppose what a government's got to realise is that more and more people are using things online now, so they've got to be able to build the capacity. And with something like the tax office, the actual traffic is going to be lumpy. It's going to be high levels of traffic at some points in time and low levels at other points in time. And that's where cloud computing is very effective, because you can effectively ramp up your capacity and ramp down your capacity. But I think the government underestimated what might happen, and suddenly people started trying to lodge their tax returns. And I would think a part of that's COVID related. People might be keen to get their tax return this year. There might be some things like accessing their superannuation early that might be relevant. So maybe this year more so than any other year, people getting in trying to get that or access some of those funds a bit earlier. But we've known about COVID for the last 4 months or so, so you would have hoped that the government was ready with that influx of additional traffic. That would have been ready for that influx, but apparently not. So it seems to be back up and running again now. It only affected the tax office for the first few days, but it's a bit of a warning to any business out there that's online that you've got to be ready when those influxes or changes in traffic occur.
And you can't fudge the figures.
That's right.
shouldn't anyway. You're listening to Tech Talk with Mathew Dickerson. Matt, what are the most used web browsers across the world? Man, that would have taken a bit of research, but there's quite a few.
Yeah,
Do tell us more.
There's a few, and it's interesting. Chrome now has become only the third browser ever since really we started using browsers that's cracked the 70% mark, and that's a huge barrier, and that's a pretty good market share position to be in. If you've got 70% market share of any market, you're in a pretty good position. But they cracked 70% last month for the first time ever for Google's Chrome. Previously, you might remember Netscape. Back in the early days, Netscape was one of those absolute bubble companies that was worth $1 squillion in its early days, and it was just a browser. So there was nothing concrete there. There wasn't an infrastructure behind it. It was just a browser. So it was worth billions of dollars at the time, and everyone got excited about that. The owners were going to be taking over the world, and then suddenly, just as quick as it went up, it went down. And so basically that was worth nothing in a very short period of time, because Microsoft came along with their Internet Explorer. And so they got past the 70% mark in the early part of this century. So about 20 years ago, Internet Explorer was up around that 70% mark. Now they're a far cry from where they used to be. You've got basically Microsoft's Edge program and their Internet Explorer program now. They make up, between the two of them, they make up only 12.6%. So from the heights of over 70% at the beginning of this century down to 12.6, pretty dramatic. So they're in second place with the combination of Edge and Internet Explorer. And in third place is Firefox, and they've had a pretty strong growth over the last few months, and they're up to 7.6%. But obviously, all of those nowhere near where Google Chrome's at the moment with 70%. And most people are aware of that. Most people, if you talk to people about what they're using, they'll often talk about Chrome. But more to the point, if you've got an app or a program that you want to run, you'll often say, oh, well, I'll have to run it on Chrome because it won't run in Edge or Explorer or Firefox. So when manufacturers of various applications know what the majority market share is, they'll make sure their apps run in that environment more so than any other environment.
Oh, so it's a bit of a setup, really.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, if you like. They become a dominant player, and then everyone builds to that dominant market position. So it really takes a real paradigm shift for someone else to knock them off. And at the moment, Microsoft's doing its best, and you've obviously got it built into the operating system, but it's 12.6 to 70% is a big jump. Yeah,
so there's a win there for Google, that's for sure, and they make lots of money out of it, and let's hope they do good things with it. I guess that's what we want, isn't it?
That's what we want, yeah. Well, the jury's out on that, I think, at the moment.
Yeah, I know.
We'll see how we go.
Well, yeah, well, thank you again, Matt, for all your research, and of course, Tech Talk is a regular segment here on Outback Radio, Outback Mornings. And Mathew, we'll talk next week.
Absolutely, sounds great.
And you're listening to Outback Mornings.